and welcome to this new series where we'll be exploring Sass and we'll see how using Sass we can create responsive layouts. The first one that we'll be taking a look at is the grid layout in this lecture. And the first thing that you need to have when you're working with Sass is a Sass compiler. You can download a Sass compiler by opening up your Visual Studio Code and going to extensions, and there you can look for a live Sass compiler. This is the one that I'm using over here. So once you install it, you'll get a button over here in the toolbar which says start watching, and if you click on that, it will start analyzing all the SCSS files that you have in your directory. So over here you can see that I've created a style.scss file and this is currently empty. What I'm trying to do over here is in my index.html file I'm making use of the generated style.css file, and then over here I'm trying to create a grid layout. Now the first thing that we have over here is inside the main we have a div and then a span tag. So what we have done is we have created a placeholder CSS which is basically providing styling elements to each of these div and span tags that we have. For example, if I show you over here, we have a styling for span tag, and similarly we have a styling for body and div tag. And the reason why we have done it so that when we explain the grid layout, you'll be able to understand how exactly things are moving along when we are applying different styles or different CSS attributes. So the first thing that we would like to do is create a grid class and use it over here. So what I'll do is I'll create a class over here and say grid, and now I'll go to style.css. Here the first thing that I need to do is I've already created this grid item.scss, so I'll be importing it first in my SCSS file. And to do that, all I need to do is make use of the import statement and specify the name of the file without the extension. That's done now, and let's go back to the HTML page, and there you can see one column is coming up. Now I'll be creating a grid class. So to create a class in CSS, all you need to do is start with dot and then the name of the class, and inside this we'll be saying that we want to have a grid layout, and here you can see the suggestion is also coming up as display grid. We'll be accepting this, and the next line will be generating it as a column based grid layout. So here the suggestion says grid template columns, repeat autofill, minmax, and then the value. So let's save that, and here we have one column. Now we'll go back, and here we'll be copying this again, and we'll have one more over here. So right now, based on the width, it's coming one below the other. If I expand this, you can see that it's coming next to each other. Now let's go back, and over here we'll be going back to style.css, and this 20 rem, what we can do is we can define it as a variable. Now we can do that by using a variable. So here we can use that variable minWidth. Now once that's done, the next thing that we need to do is specify the gap. So if you see right now, these two columns are stuck together, so there's no spacing between them, and to provide a space we will be making use of gridGap. So here we'll say grid dash gap, and then again we can specify a value over here like 2 rem, and once we do that, you can see that the spacing is now visible over here. Again, we can take this and create it as a variable and create a variable gridGap, and the same then can be used over here with the dollar symbol. So a couple of things I would like to reiterate. You can define variables over here in this way, preceding with a dollar symbol. You can import another file using the import statement. Now coming back to this, we'll now go back and remove this from here, and we'll have many other different variations of the grid layout. And to do that, I'll be just generating these values over here like 1 column grid, 2 column grid, 3 column, and 4 column grid over here. If I expand this a bit, you'll notice 1 column is coming up on top, then 2 columns side by side, 3 columns again side by side, and 4 columns it's coming on to the bottom. If I expand it now, you'll see 4 columns side by side. Now there's one thing that we need to do over here is that you can see that the columns one below the other are very much close together, so we have to have some kind of spacing over here. And to do that, we'll be inside the grid class, we'll be making use of this directive, SCSS directive, which is going to apply this margin top to all the grid elements that we have, these span tags that we have, as they have this grid class. Now you'll also notice that the top column, if you see this top section, we do not have that width available, which we have over here between these two columns, 1 and 2. Now, in order to provide that, we can obviously create a class for the main tag. So here we'll see grid, and let's say gridGap is the name of the class that we come up with. And here in our style.css file, we can again provide the same gridGap by creating another class, gridWrap. And now you see we have the same gap on top as well. And that's pretty much it. Now you have a layout, grid layout basically, and a responsive grid layout. So as soon as you start resizing it, you can see that as soon as I'm resizing it, it's accordingly adjusting itself. There we go. So as soon as you start increasing the size of this, you can see that it's automatically adjusting itself based on the screen resolution. So that was grid layout using a CSS